Test 1, 2, 3. Can you hear? Thank you. Do you have anybody else? Who's this lady with the purse on the floor?
She said she's a supporter.
No, I'm going to tell you about her.
She said she doesn't want to come with you.
Oh, okay. Okay. What about the others that you tried to reach out to?
They said they're trying to go.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we can't wait on them. Where did you get Sassy Trucker from?
My mama made him up that name, my mama made him up the name about 3 years ago for my YouTube channel.
I love it. Okay.
Thank you.
So, one thing I didn't get.
No.
I'll just say.
Yes. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Sheila Jackson Lee. I represent Houston in the 18th Congressional District, and I'm a member of the Homeland Security Committee, and have been an advocate for the importance of the United States government standing by our fellow Americans who travel or live overseas. And many of you know that we work with the State Department's hostage envoy, Ambassador Carson, and work with his team and families to bring and to work with hostages who particularly were part of families in Texas. And so Trevor Reed, who has returned home, is someone we advocated for, grateful that Trevor is safe, and looking forward to a good future for him. In his return home, he had a passionate commitment to fight against injustice. And so he was in Ukraine, injured, and is now healing and at home. We then fought for, alongside of Trevor Reed, the hometown girl of Brittany Griner for more months than we could imagine, through some harrowing times, who was wrongfully detained on trumped-up charges and misrepresented to the international world. And we are grateful for friends and family around the world. And we now see Brittany Griner home, working with the return of hostages, working with organizations to have hostages return, and playing in Phoenix. So we're very happy for that. That deserves an applause, playing in Phoenix and helping others. And so when it came to my attention from Ms. Keith, Fox News, Ms. Baxter, her mother, reached out, and when Ms. Baxter's young daughter to be inappropriately held in a country in the Mideast, in a city in particular, Dubai, through really a very unfortunate misunderstanding. I just knew that we had to get Tierra Allen, who herself has her own claim of uniqueness. She is TikTok's sassy trucker, and there's a great deal of affection for her. And we just could not tolerate that she was being inappropriately held. First, the story leads us to a fender bender that we know in Houston happens a lot, and the taking of the car. She's in a strange country, trying to follow the rules and the laws, and unbeknownst to her, when the car is impounded, all of her belongings were there. Usually we're able to go to the lot and at least get our materials out. If it's a police matter, we can engage with the police. If there is some absolute catastrophic circumstance, that can be handled, and we are able to get what we need, or there's a legal process we can address. That did not happen. And it happened, the incident happened almost at the time that Tierra was getting ready to come home. And she should have been able to come home. I understand misunderstandings, but misunderstandings can lead sometimes to great tragedies. And so for the period of time, she was trying to do her best between the police, between the people in the accident, who thank goodness no one was harmed or injured, and where the rent-a-car was. And it was a maze of confusion and refusal to allow this young woman to return to her mom. I'm very glad to have gotten the notice. And when I got the notice, I truly believe that the United States of America needs to stand firmly behind its traveling Americans.
That's right, that's right.
And I also know that we as traveling Americans will do our best to follow protocols and rules and be as polite as we can. But when there is a conflict where one party does not want to understand, or they see you as an American, or they see you as being with a lot of resources, it's a challenge. We certainly are friends and allies of the UAE, but that didn't help. And it took me calling the principal officer, first the Consul General in Dubai, the consul office. I want to make it very clear. Starting, they were in DC, and then they went back, and then we began to work with Patrick, who was the principal officer there. And we became totally engaged, and he was totally engaged with both Tierra and her mother. First, resolving and working through the persons who were in the car accident. And I want to express appreciation for that family that understood Tierra's plight. She was a young person that had no bad intentions, was visiting Dubai. She was absolutely overwhelmed with how wonderful and beautiful the city it was. So she was there for good and could have given a good story about this city. And that family said it's okay. They did their own internal assessment, and they knew that this was a young woman that didn't mean harm. That should have been the end of it. That's right. For her to be able to get her belongings, but that did not happen. And so, again, we had to engage with police to resolve this quickly, to say that she should not be held, and certainly there should not be a travel ban, and she had a travel ban, and there should not be, her possessions should not be held. Again, the United States, working with them, working with Patrick, was able to work and encourage the police with payments that had to be made to be able to move forward. In between, she went to the rental site, and that didn't work that well. And she tried. And she tried ahead of time to deal with the people there in the most professional way possible, and unfortunately that did not work. But if it had not been for working with the State Department and the Consul office, another American would have been wrongfully, inappropriately held. These are happening all around the world, and it is crucial to know that our fellow Americans count. And when they travel overseas, it is the most frightening thing to think that you have abandoned or left on your own. And I want to applaud the State Department, Biden administration, and the Consul General office, who Mrs. Baxter will know, working with me, we were able to make it clear that Tierra had to come home. I am grateful for the Iranian release of our Americans still in midway, but I know these families up close and personal. I know how these families are feeling. The Iranian hostages have been held for a variety of number of years. They're not free yet, they're still in process. But it is the most frightening thing as a mother, a father, a relative, when your loved one cannot get out of a country. We must set these policies, and the United States has to continue to be strong to help our citizens when they're in need. And I'm so glad to be able to say, along with Representative Ron Reynolds, who represents the state of Texas in the state legislature and has encountered my work on human trafficking, sex trafficking, and has been a strong supporter. I'm glad he's here along with myself to give a hearty welcome and to explain that this story could not have ended as well as it did. It could have ended where Tierra would still be there. The federal government has got to be the arm that rescues families, sons and daughters, mothers and fathers, and extended family members when, through no fault of their own, they may get awry of culture and rules. But with culture, we must learn it. We must use the famous words, "I'm sorry." And I know Tierra used them at some point. And then we need to be allowed to return home. And so I do want to offer my appreciation to those who work with me, U.S. State Department Consul General Office in Dubai and Patrick Tomorrow. These are the men and women in the Foreign Service that I use when I'm fighting every day when an incident happens to bring a loved one home. So I want to first hear from Tierra. Welcome home.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you here. You're talented. You're unique. You're getting a worldwide experience. And we want you to do that. And at the same time, we want you to be safe. You want to come and say a word? Tierra Allen.
Tierra Allen, I would first like to thank Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee for helping me get back home. Thank everyone for supporting me through this tough time. And I'm happy to be back, and I appreciate all of the support from family members and friends. And I truly appreciate everyone who stood by me through this tough experience. Thank you.
Before you go, Mom, because as they say, you are strong. I'm just going to introduce Representative Ron Reynolds for a moment. Representative Reynolds, thank you so very much for being here, for caring, for recognizing you work with me with Brittany Griner. You joined me at the rally, and of course, you were aware of Trevor Reed. He's our friend from the North. We work with other members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats. We must bring our fellow Americans home.
Thank you, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. I'm Ron Reynolds. As she stated, I'm a state representative for District 27 and also chair of the Texas Legislative Black Caucus. I will be very brief, but I must say, I thank God for people like Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who is a relentless pursuer of justice, not just in the 18th Congressional District, but making sure that people like the Sassy Trucker are able to come home. You know, Congresswoman, I thank you for being a fearless advocate. I thank you for fighting, as you said, when it comes to human trafficking and human rights violations all over this world. As a father of a daughter, Ms. Baxter, I can't imagine the kind of anguish and anxiety and stress and strain that it must be to know that your daughter is away in a foreign land, not knowing if she's going to come home on some trumped up potential charges and facing possible years of imprisonment. Thank you, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, for being steadfast and movable, always there. This lady is a sojourner truth. She is someone who speaks truth to power. And I just want you to know how much I appreciate you and how grateful I am, Ms. Allen, that you're home. Welcome home, welcome home, welcome home. And thank you finally, Congresswoman, for highlighting these atrocities, because we want to be safe when we go travel abroad. We want to know that as American citizens that we can travel, see the country, and then safely return home, not to be held captive in another part of the world, away from your friends and the family, loved ones, where people can keep you captive. And in this case, they were trying to extort money out of her. So, Congresswoman, thank you for using this platform, not just to welcome her home, but to highlight these atrocities that happen far too frequently. Thank you for helping bring Brittany Griner back home. Thank you for always fighting and being fearless in your pursuit of justice. Thank you, thank you.
Representative, thank you. It's important when the state recognizes the importance of being involved in these issues. I thank you mightily for your work and your service, and you made a very good point. As I bring up Mrs. Baxter, I just want you to hear from a Rada Sterling, who is the CEO of Detained in Dubai. Tierra was living a nightmare and facing fines and lengthy imprisonment until her case was brought into the spotlight of the international media scrutiny. Without that attention, all too often, the authorities have paid little attention to due process, fairness, and human rights because it is not their way. As I said, there are relationships between the UAE and the United States. That made it better for us to engage, far different from when we were trying to engage with Russia or Iran. But the very fact that this young woman was leaving in April and did not get home until August, how frightened it was for her mom, family members, to even understand when she might arrive home. And as I told you about the police, she was told at the police station that she had been accused, expanding, of shouting. That's the different cultural mores that we must understand. And for Americans who are rambunctious and friendly, we're just trying to get home. And so what might have been perceived in one way, please understand, it would not be the same here. We certainly want to warn Americans about that, but the main point that we want to make is that when there's a misunderstanding, we should be able to apologize, and our young people, our families, should be able to come home. Whatever might have been perceived as a shout should have been able to be cleared up in a very brief moment. So, don't know what regulation we might have been adverse to, but what we do know is that Tierra hurt no one, caused no major incident, didn't offend the nation, speak ill of anyone. She was just a young woman with a fender bender that we're so grateful to that family that prayed and resolved that, and then had to extricate herself from a travel ban. And so we never give up the fight. These are our precious fellow citizens and friends, and we must always stand by them. Ms. Baxter, you had to be courageous during that time. You were everywhere, calling everyone. I'm glad we were able to really stand with you.
Thank you.
Ms. Baxter, Tina Baxter, her mother.
All right, hello everyone. First of all, I'm overexcited to have my baby back. And Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee called me strong, but I don't know if she realizes that she encouraged me to stay strong. We spoke over the phone a couple of nights, and she was actually traveling, but she stopped to keep me brief on everything she was doing to make sure my daughter was returned home safely. I want to say thank you to everyone that showed support in all of the prayers. All of my friends, family, Rada Sterling, she was very instrumental with providing legal advice. And Danielle Jeffries was another young woman who was also detained in Dubai a few years ago. She reached out to Tierra and then me to support us through this misfortune. I want to say thank God above everything, because He answered all of my prayers, and I can't just, I don't know how grateful I feel being able to thank the Congresswoman for everything she did, and our U.S. Consulate. I mean, words does not explain how happy I am for the help that they provided. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Thank you. It's a good end, but the fight was worth it, and we've got her home. So thank you very much. If there are any questions, we'll take questions at this time. So let me conclude by saying there are many persons, for a variety of reasons, are held in foreign countries. Some have been designated as hostages who are wrongfully detained. It's something that sometimes we here in the United States do not get the full impact of. I really have been immersed in this when the families began to come, particularly in Texas, that their loved one had been held as a hostage. And my only strong point is, these countries are countries that the United States has relationships with, and countries that we don't have relationships with. But I think the most important point is the power of the United States, flag of the United States. We do have the strength of democracy and due process. And in many places that is not the case. But it is extremely important. And I do think we have the leadership of the Secretary of State, Secretary Blinken, who's really got it, to realize that we've got to go after those who have been held, however they've been held, restrained, not allowed to travel. Can you imagine the fear, as I said, the fright? And even if some rule, protocol, and maybe even a law may have been inadvertently violated in this instance, it is important to bring our fellow Americans home. I always believe that. And where there is a moment of tragedy, we have Americans who've been engaged and are actually incarcerated. We continue still to try to find a way to have a resolution so that they can come home. Young people travel all the time, all around the world, who are from America. Just imagine the fright of saying, you can't go home. That is the purpose, I believe, of the work of the State Department, work of the hostage sector, and our hostage envoy, Ambassador Carson, who is working now all over the world where Americans are being held. So my thank you to them, my thank you to the Consulate General, but my very great thank you to Patrick Tomorrow, who I sent a best wishes note because he is from Hawaii, but he's serving now halfway around the world in Dubai. Thank you, Patrick, for taking calls at all hours of the night, since our hours are so different, and getting up and giving us the update as to what is going on. I want you to know that you're a fine Foreign Service officer. Thank you so very much. And with that, if there are no questions, we thank you all for your presence. And I just want to end with, welcome Tierra home. Yes, the sassy trucker is here. And she is going to give you a little bit of excitement with her words, her spiciness, her encouragement. That's what it's all about. Ms. Baxter, you happy?
I am so excited. I'm happy.
Thank you.
She's going to get you on TikTok.
All right. I love it. Thank you all very much.
she maxed out 2 years, and I'm trying to get her Trey to do some major max stuff.
Okay, but I'll have to stay long. Do I have to stay long? Well, let me use my mic to thank my guests for being here, seeing how should I say it, what democracy is and what we should be doing. You can come up, we're sort of relaxed now. I think we're media, we're relaxed, right? Yeah, it's a pleasure, and thank you for helping me. And if you know me, you know my heart, I am embedded in this value of democracy. And I was just in a meeting the other day saying that it must be everyone's fight.
Yes.
The preservation of democracy, everyone's fight. And we're seeing it now.
Yes.
We thought we would never see this, and we're seeing it now. I don't know if Mr. Trump will ever go away, but it's not him, it's seeing how fragile and how we have to fight it. And this example of a country that they're friends, they're here. I don't have anything personally against them, but their very process, without our intervention, could have been a year or more.
It's terrifying.
They had no qualms in holding passport and her wallet. No, you know, here you were like, what? You give me my stuff back.